Hey there, how are you guys doing? I hope you're having fun. I had a lot of fun this weekend. I 3D printed a lot of stuff, especially my son's birthday is coming, so I'm printing a lot of stuff for his friends. And one thing that I liked the most was 3D printed airplane, which you can, with a slingshot, you can shoot it and it flies, it kind of glides. I think I should do a session just about 3D printer, especially the printer that I have is fully open source 3D printer. Anyway, the point is that I actually never feel that I'm working. I love technology, I love reading, I love writing. I always tell my wife that if I had some other full time job when I come home or take a break, this is what I would be doing. So, literally, I'm getting paid to do the things that I love doing, or to kind of, I get paid to fulfill my hobby. So, I had a nice week, especially, and things get better, especially when you're working in open source field, because in addition to kind of having fun, you also feel that you are working on technologies that are kind of making this world a better place. I mean, it can have a different repercussions, but that's the kind of feeling that I get when I work on open source. Like the interview that I did with Michael Hall, where we talked about endless OS. I think actually I should talk more about it, but you can see how they are trying to help people in those countries to get access to computer, even if they don't have very good internet. So I love talking to or hanging out with this open source community. And yesterday I talked to my friend Kai. I will not dare, kind of pronounce his name. I don't want to mispronounce it. I come from India and my name get mispronounced a lot, so I don't want to do that. But Kai is a very prominent or very prolific developer who contributes a lot to the KDE project. And if you're a Plasma user or if you have used any KDE project, I'm pretty sure that you are touching on some of the work that Kai has done. So let's talk to Kai. The reason I'm talking to him, I mean, we have been connected for a very long time, but the reason I'm talking to him especially is because he won Academy Award. Okay, no, this is not the Academy Award that we all kind of think of. Academy is an event that is organized by the KDE community. Here, it's not C in Academy, it's K. It's KDE event. And he was one of the winners of this year's Academy Award in the applications category. Excuse me. So I talked to him to understand the work that he's doing. So let's start with your involvement with the KDE community. How did you get involved? For how long have you been working on the KDE projects?
So, well, I've been a KDE user for, I don't know, since I can think. The first time I used KDE was like at the age of 6 with SUSE 6.1. So that's basically, I've been using KDE for all my life, essentially. And then I think in 2010 was the first time I actually started like using KDE source build, building things from the SVN and playing around with beta snapshots and things like that. And so I started as a translator. And then later during when I started my computer science classes, I got into C and C++ and just wanted to play around and did my first contributions with KDE. And so basically it went down from there, kind of.
I recall my early days of Linux and open source, and back in those days, it was called KDE, the Cool Desktop Environment. And I was a KDE user, but over time, KDE has evolved into a community. KDE, when you think of the word KDE, you're not talking about software. KDE is a community, and they develop different kind of components of the software stack that you use. They have Plasma Desktop, they have a framework, and then they have applications. So, what are the components that you work on out of these three?
Well, mostly in Plasma, so the desktop is my main domain. So I do the occasional bug fixes like in Dolphin and Kate and things like that, but mostly it's a desktop that I enjoy working with most. because it's like a user visible thing, and I'm more of a user interface guy. So that's yeah.
I must confess that despite starting my Linux journey with KDE, I moved to GNOME. I think I was using Debian, and then I moved to Ubuntu, and Ubuntu by default used GNOME, so I was a GNOME user. But then Unity happened, and that's when I kind of switched back to KDE. But by that time, KDE was kind of, as I explained, into these three segments and three components. So I was a Plasma user, but Plasma is a big stack of applications, big stack of software. So what kind of software that you write for Plasma Desktop, or if I may ask, what is your involvement with the Plasma Desktop?
Well, basically, I have my fingers and everything. So I started doing applets mostly. So the battery monitor was my first big contribution, I think 4 years ago already. And then I did like various productivity features like jump list actions. So I kind of like borrow features from other environments. Like jump list actions is something that Unity really promoted and got third-party users like Firefox and other browsers to use them. So I basically picked up their work, and like if it makes sense, it's stupid to say we steal ideas, we copycat thing. It's just if it makes sense, if it makes you more productive, why shouldn't we have a certain feature? Like if Windows has something, I'm happy to like come up with something similar if I find it useful. And so I mostly do productivity features. Um, so yeah, jump list actions was one thing, and then also a color picker widget is like my little toy, or media controls. So I added media controls all over the place. You have them on a lock screen now. You have them on your task manager. You have this media controller icon, and now with Plasma browser integration, which is a project I'm currently working in, you can even like control YouTube videos from your media controller on your desktop without even leaving what the application you're currently working with. And that's basically my goal, to get Plasma out of the way so that you can focus on whatever task you're currently working with.
You touched upon something that has been kind of controversial for a while. If you look at the whole Apple versus Samsung legal battle during the times of Steve Jobs, it was just unnecessary accusation of one party is stealing ideas from other party. But if you look at human civilization, that's what we do. We build on top of the work that was done by someone else. I mean, we stand on the giants' shoulders. I mean, we stand on the shoulders of the giants. You will not. I mean, our modern Western civilization will not exist without the work that was done by Chinese and Mayans and Indians and all those civilizations. So we learn from each other, we borrow from each other, and we add value to it. And that's how we progress. I mean, if you look at a car industry, you have to have some basics. You have to have four wheels, you have to have a steering wheel. Tesla has borrowed the idea of the car from Ford, and now they are taking it to the next stage, which is more or less like turning cars into an IoT on wheels kind of stuff. So I really never get that part about stealing or borrowing ideas. We should do more and kind of build on top of that. But when we look at KDE and Plasma, and you do borrow all these ideas from other projects, what actual value does Plasma bring to Linux users, which is kind of unique to it?
Yeah, well, Plasma or KDE in general has always been known for having customization options all over the place. But I really like the new mantra that Plasma has taken up recently, which is this simple by default, powerful when needed kind of approach. So that like you can install a Plasma distribution and it works nicely out of the box. You don't have to push 20 different knobs to have a working setup. You can if you want. Like I prefer my panel at the top. I prefer my window buttons on the left. That's just my personal preference, but you can still use it out of the box. And so, yeah, yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but and that's really what Plasma is about, that it's simple by default, powerful when needed.
I mean, one of the reasons that I use Plasma is all these customization options, because it's not that everybody wants to customize everything, and it's not like you should have all the customizations options, but there are professionals who have a certain workflow. Now, either you get used to whatever options you have there, and that's what most people do. People just get used to whatever kind of options they are there in their platform. And but there are a lot of places where you can work better if you can kind of customize that platform so that you have that consistent workflow no matter what platform you're using. And that's the kind of customization that I get from Plasma Desktop. And that's the real value that I see there. Excuse me. Now, looking at your work, why was this award given to you? Can you just tell about that?
Well, well, I don't know why they chose it, but I think I've been doing a lot of like valuable work to Plasma recently, like especially visible work. So if you look at like Sebas, I think did a talk on Saturday about like Plasma, what's ahead in what's happened and what's going to be happening in the future. And so I looked at the slides and I said like, that's a feature I did, that's a feature I did, that's a feature that I've been working on. So it's kind of like I'm quite proud of what I achieved in past year with Plasma, and so I think that's like I guess some of the reason why I got the award. But basically, I got the award for whole Plasma, so of course there's lots of other people working on Plasma, and so a shout out to all the other Plasma developers that help make the Plasma desktop great. But yeah.
And that was announced at Academy, right? It's a
Yes.
KDE event.
Yeah. So Academy is the annual gathering of basically all KDE contributors, be it developers, translators, documentation, and everything. And so we meet up every year. And to have an in-person meeting, it's usually a 2 day, 2 days with talks about various topics like Plasma, like I don't know, cloud things and future and various development related tasks. And then there's another week afterwards where we can have meetings in person, discuss strategies, work on bugs, just hack the entire day, sitting next to each other. Like you're having the best KDE people sitting around you. And if you have an issue with something, you could just peek left and peek right and get things done really productively. So in-person meetings are really, really important for moving the KDE community forward. And so it's a shame I didn't manage to go there this year, but I guess next year I'll be around again.
Well, you're not there physically, but you got the award, so that's not bad.
Yeah.
I want to be at Academy too because since I have been covering KDE community for a very long time, when I went to OpenSUSE conference, I met a lot of people, and like I've known them for so long, but most of the people I have never met in person. I do meet them at its open source and Linux events, but I would love to meet the whole KDE community and a lot of members there. So I hope to attend Academy in future, maybe next year. We'll see. But it was. I hope it was a great event. Now, what's interesting about KDE community is that, and that has been my experience, that you guys have done a lot of incredible things where you were ahead of the curve. There are a lot of projects that I used like 4 or 5 years ago, and you see them now being adopted by Apple or Microsoft or Google in their projects. I mean, KDE Connect was a very good example, and I use Mac OS. I have iOS devices, and the way they work with each other is amazing. But what's even more amazing is that the KDE community did that work like 4 or 5 years ago, or even more than that. So you guys at times work on technologies that are like future or forward looking, but somehow I also feel that they don't translate into a product and project which kind of helps the larger Linux and open source community. So what is your opinion about that?
I think one thing that I experienced with the KDE community in general, which is kind of sad, is that oftentimes we had like the technologies that were 5 years ahead of everybody else, and then we worked on it and did it like 80%, and then we kind of moved on or screwed up marketing, and then some others overtook us, like with KDE Connect. Like you could, I don't know, I get my phone calls on my computer, I get SMS and whatnot, sharing files and clipboard sync, and now you have it on iOS and macOS as well, and they're like, "Oh, it's so great," and I'm just like, "We've had it for I don't know how many years, but nobody knew about it," and so it's kind of sad. Or like with desktop search and speech thingies, we all had it years ago, but we kind of screwed up with marketing, and so yeah.
I hear you, but I don't think we can actually blame it on marketing. The reason is that the kind of, I don't know if it is the right word to use here, but there is a kind of fragmentation in the Linux desktop world. I'm not talking about the enterprise world where you see companies collaborate because they are serving those customers, and most of those customers are using, they are multi distribution companies. There may be a Red Hat shop, there may be SUSE shop, there may be Canonical shop, but they're using a mix of technology. So these companies collaborate. That's why you see massive collaboration in OpenStack world or in Docker world or Cloud Foundry world, where they are collaborating so that there's no fragmentation as such there. You can get same OpenStack from Red Hat, SUSE, or Canonical, or whatever technology you want to consume. You can very easily consume with their platform. However, the Linux desktop world is a totally different world. There is so much fragmentation here, and the level of fragmentation is not just at the operating system level. It goes in distributions, I mean desktop environments. Then there were some projects, I don't want to name them, who wanted to create their own, I won't say vault, but they wanted to create their own app ecosystem where applications will be written specifically for their platform. I don't understand that. And I was talking to Mark Shuttleworth a few days ago for a story that's coming in Linux Pro magazine, and he also expressed the same frustration because I asked him that, first of all, does he think that Linux will ever succeed on desktop, or that if we ever had any chance? And he said, yes, we had a lot of opportunities there. If you look back, the whole Vista fiasco, then you look at Windows 7 happened, then Windows 8 happened, and now Windows 10 is creating a lot of privacy issues. I mean, I have a Windows system which I use for testing, but I don't run it as my primary machine because I don't trust it. There is so much telemetry data that I don't have any control. So I use Linux desktop or macOS mostly. These were the opportunities, these where Linux could have kind of taken over the world, and that's exactly what Linux has done everywhere else in the enterprise market, in the IoT world. No matter where you look, Linux dominates except for the desktop world, because I feel that there is a lack of collaboration, there is a lack of communication, there is a lack of compromises that you can make. People are not willing to make compromises. That's why it's easier for them to just fork the project, which I think is counterproductive, which I think is actually against the whole idea of open source. So what is happening is that as a result of this, Linux desktop is suffering. Just think of a world where all these projects came together on some common grounds or common opinion. That would have been amazing. So what's your opinion about this fragmentation?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the lack of collaboration, or that they are keeping reinventing the wheel, is really something that like puts you back years again and years again. And so, yeah, I think that's really one of the reasons that it hasn't taken off, because then like you can take a 25-year-old Windows 3.1 application and run it on Windows 10, I think, mostly, if it doesn't do anything crazy. But then we've had like Qt 3, Qt 4, Qt 5, GTK 2, GTK 3, and everything. Like they reinvent the wheel every 5 times. So 5 years. And so I'm already concerned when I hear like Qt 6 coming in a couple of years. And I'm like, oh no, we have Plasma 5 now. And can we just keep it running for a couple of, like, a decade or something, instead of doing something else? Like, it's working now and now we have to break it again. It's like this constant cycle of, once it's working, then we end up breaking it and doing something new and abandoning the old one. And it's really something that's, I think that's something that really hinders more widespread adoption.
Yes, and that's a big problem. The reason I moved to Plasma was GNOME 3 shell and Unity. I mean, I had been using GNOME for a very long time. It was a mature, very stable, usable system. But with GNOME 3, it's more like going back to the version 1 of GNOME 2. It was deprived of all the features that were used to. It did not have the functionality that I needed in my system. So I looked around and I found Plasma. And by that time, I think it was KDE 4. I don't even recall because it's been so long now. But it was a mature platform which I was able to use. I went back to my workflow. It has all the features and everything. And then Plasma 5 happened, where it went back to KDE 4 era, where it lacked a lot of core features that I was used to. So it was kind of frustrating that every time a new version of a desktop environment comes out, it just goes back to square one. I mean, to be honest with you, that is one of the reasons I bought a MacBook, because I wanted some consistency. I was used to so many features and functionalities that I could not work without them. When Windows 10 came out, you did not go back to Windows XP era. You still have all the functionality. You were able to use all those applications. You were able to use all the features. They used new technologies. They added more features, but they did not take the basic functionality away. Same is happening with macOS. I mean, I have installed iOS 11 on my iPad Pro. It's a brand new operating system with a lot of new features, but it's not going back to square one. I'm still using everything that I was using on iOS 10. They just added more features. But in the Linux world, it's really frustrating to see that all these desktop environments, they just go back to square one when a new version comes out.
Yeah, it's a tough story. So, like, with my developer hat on, of course, I'm looking forward to a Qt 6, like, where you can fix deficiencies in your architecture that you didn't have. Like in Plasma 6, we could, I don't know, go crazy and fix various shortcomings that we've had over the years and things like that. So from a developer perspective, it's great if you can break things like GTK 4, which is like compatibility, just ship an old version with it. But from a kind of enterprise perspective, it's a tough story. So I don't have if I had a solution, I'd probably be rich and selling billions of dollars of software, right? So I don't know.
I am excited about newer technologies too. I love new technologies, but my only complaint here as a user is that why do you have to go back to square one whenever you use a newer technology? I mean, it's like, I cannot even explain it to you. It's more like Tesla comes out with a totally new. I mean, when Tesla came out with their cars, they did not go back to horse cars era where you had no engine or no brake, no seat belts. No, they just built on top of it. They used new technologies, yet they maintained the advanced features that you are used to in a car. So similarly, even if you are moving to Qt 6 or 7 or 8 or 10, you should still kind of maintain the progress that you have made on that platform instead of going back. And then what happens, the pattern that I see with GNOME or KDE or whatever is that it comes with a new technology and it goes back to square one when it comes to features and user experience. And by the time you get all those features back into the product, when you get the experience that you were getting on KDE 4 with KDE 5, the next version of Qt will come out, and then you will start again. So for a user, it's a continuous vicious cycle of unstable experience. So what's your kind of suggestion as an application developer? And what more I think is frustrating is that there is so much innovation happening in the Linux desktop world, but we lack collaboration and compromises. Just imagine the how well the Linux world, desktop world would be if we can borrow not just ideas but actual technologies from different projects. Gnome has a lot of great things. Plasma has a lot of great things. Mate has a lot of things. Cinnamon has a lot of different nice things. And but the problem is each project is kind of reinventing their own wheel instead of borrowing not just the ideas but the technologies. And what's even more frustrating is, first of all, is the Linux base. Second is it's open source technologies. In ideal world, I would have seen that all these projects would borrow technologies from each other and create a very rich, very wealthy system that people use. But here, totally opposite is happening. So what's your take on this?
Well, for me, I I think I can now mention a word which will like upset lots of people, but personally, I think System D is a really great effort because like all the services it consumes, like everyone's like, oh, System D, it eats all the services, becomes a huge unmaintainable mess. But for me as a developer, it's perfect. I have a standardized interface, like time zones. If I just want to change the freaking clock of my system, we have, I don't know, 10 different code paths. Every distribution puts the config files in some other location. And with System D and time date D, I think, or time zone D, you just have a debug service which you tell, like, change the time to this thing. It does all the authentication, like you have to be root to change the time. You don't have to worry about anything. It just does it. Then you have the host name D. It tells you, like, you're a laptop, you're a tablet, things like that. So it's a really central part, which is now on virtually every distribution except for some special ones. So that's really something that I, as developer, find really, really useful, having a common base to work with.
Of course, System D is a good example. I'm a System D user and a fan. I run Arch Linux. I use OpenSUSE, and I run Debian server on my Linux systems, and I upgraded it so that I can use System D there. As a user, I'm not a developer, but as a user, it has made my life so easy or easier when I use System D. It's, I mean, to be honest with you, back in those days, it was really frustrating for me. I mean, it depends on how. Obviously, I'm a big fan of System D. I run Arch Linux, I use OpenSUSE, and I upgraded my Debian server, which runs on Linode, so that I'm able to use System D there. They have done a great job there. I interviewed Lennart a few months ago for the New Stack, and you can read his interview. I will put the link here. And it's an amazing system. I don't know what hate and what disagreement is there. That's okay. Technical disagreement is okay. Open source community is more about politics than it's about technology. So those discussions are okay too. I mean, as long as you work together on the same common goal, it's okay to disagree. But I love System D. If you look at System D as an example, can we replicate the same kind of model across distribution or desktop environments?
Or like with the Halium project, which builds a common base for all kinds of mobile platforms.
One such project or collaboration that comes into my mind is Flatpak. What do you think about Flatpak?
Flatpak, it's kind of funny to see that how many technological or how many approaches we are borrowing from like Windows. Like back in the days, it was, I can update my computer without even restarting. And now they're starting to reboot the computer, install the updates, and then reboot again to a system to ensure it's all in a consistent state. Like something that we hated about Windows is something we're doing now. And it's the same with the Flatpak kind of thing. I haven't read into much detail, so I could be wrong here, but from what I understand is that you also package lots of libraries within the Flatpak package, so that you ship a lot of stuff with it, and then you end up in this kind of DLL hell with security nightmare and whatnot. So
I'm not an expert on Flatpak, but what I do know, or from what I have heard, is it's called diff packages, where if the new update is there, it only install the new libraries or new packages in an application. It doesn't kind of download the whole 700 MB of LibreOffice or whatever. I may be wrong, so don't quote me on that, but that's my kind of impression from what I have learned from the container and Docker world. Is that, let's say your application depends on the 6.2 version of the library and 6.1 is installed on your system, so that will install the new version of the library. But if this app also uses the 6.1 version, then it will share it with the library which is already installed on the system, so you do not have copies of same libraries across applications. That is one thing. Second is that even if that was the case, I don't think it's a big deal, because these days hard drive storage is so cheap. I have 10 terabyte of hard drive for my home server. Actually, it's 20 terabyte one, but I paid around $250 for one hard drive. I have SSDs on all of my systems. It's like 512 GB of SSD, and it was under $100. So even if I have to allot 20 gigabyte or 40 gigabyte of store, just a second, let me turn it off. 20 gigabyte of, even if I have to kind of allot 20 gigabyte or 40 gigabyte of storage for the application or operating system, I don't mind it. It's dirt cheap. But the value that it will add to the Linux world is unmatched. All these distributions will be able to offer latest and greatest and stable, well tested, because those packages have been tested on extremely popular distributions like Ubuntu. So even if you are some new distribution, unknown distribution, and you don't have the same kind of user base that the bigger distribution has, you benefit from it, because you don't have to worry about a smaller test or user base which can test your applications against your platform, and they can file bug reports, because your applications are getting tested by the much larger audience. At the same time, it will lower the barrier for a lot of application developers, because they now know that they have access to the entire Linux world, desktop world. They are not targeting just Ubuntu or OpenSUSE or Fedora or Debian or whatnot. Once you write an application in Flatpak or AppImage, is available for everyone. So I think it can be a very advantageous situation for the Linux world. What do you think about it?
Yeah, definitely. I think this Flatpak portals approach is a really needed thing, so that you have a standardized portal for opening files. So if I have an application, I open a file on KDE Plasma, I get a KDE Plasma file dialog and not this weird GNOME one. And that's something that I wanted for ever since I started using Linux, is to have a proper file dialog in all applications. And so that's really something I'm looking forward to, having a standardized way to open files and print dialogues and things like that with those portals. And then every desktop has their own portal. So on GNOME, you get the GNOME portal. On Plasma, you get the Plasma portal. So that's, yeah. I think for third parties, the Flatpak thing is really great, because you can't expect some company to package, I don't know, 50 different formats in Debian and whatnot. So if you want to download some application, oftentimes you can't, because if it's not in your repository, if they don't provide a package, then you're screwed. But with Flatpak, they could probably provide one package for download on their website and then call it a day. Well, I think the first major thing will be Wayland, but other than that, I don't know. I hope we get a bit more collaboration and more third-party support. I mean, in the past couple of years, we've had lots of proprietary services coming, like Steam and things like that, that people would not have dreamed of. So I'm not good at making predictions, but I hope we're still around in 5 or 10 years. So.
Okay, just have a look at it from a very realistic point of view. QD 6 is coming, more new technologies are coming. So, what kind of experience Plasma users can expect from the upcoming releases, or what do you think we should expect from the desktop Linux world?
Um, yeah, I think one thing that is getting more and more important is integration with browsers and websites. So that's one thing that I've actually been working on with Plasma to provide better integration with websites, because you're like 95% of the time you're spending in the web browser doing all kinds of things. And so that's something that I want to have Plasma be better at, is controlling your, I don't know, Spotify website client with the media controls, and providing various integration with websites, basically.
That will be exciting. I use Chromebook. My wife is a full-time Chromebook user, and even they don't. I mean, they Google pretty much owns YouTube, and they have Chrome browser, and now they have Chrome OS and Chromebooks, but they lack that kind of integration and feature. They're working on it. I follow a lot of Chrome developer on Google Plus, so I keep an eye on the development work that is going on there. So that sounds quite interesting. Let's quickly talk about some personal stuff. You're German. You lived in Germany, and I'm aware of a lot of German companies who work on KDE and open source software. I have a lot of friends whose primary job is to work on those components that builds the whole KDE stack. But what kind of work do you do? Are you a full-time KDE developer, or you're a software developer who work on something else, but you contribute to KDE in your free time? Can you just quickly talk about the kind of work that you do in your day job?
So I work as a software developer in Stuttgart. So I'm working, I'm writing apps for Android and iOS, but also with Qt. So it's kind of a synergy with the day job with KDE stuff. So I learn things at KDE that I can use at work and vice versa. So I also get to do fixes in Qt and things like that. And it's also quite nice. We have 5 colleagues of mine are also using Plasma in the office. So, and some of them are really like hardcore Windows users. They just wanted to try it out. Maybe it works better for them. And so it's quite interesting to see, like in German, we have something called Betriebsblind, which basically means you just work your way around bugs that you know, but they don't know them. So they try to, I don't know, move some icons, and then it breaks horribly. And like you get used to not doing those things, but if they're novice user, it's quite interesting to see like how a Windows, like they're IT people, they know computers, but they don't know like Linux desktop. So seeing them using Plasma is really an inspiration, and some of the features that I recently worked on, or bug fixes I did, were actually driven by their complaints. So that's also quite nice.
Thanks for talking to us, Kai, today. It was kind of really interesting discussion. We touched upon some very serious topics that the desktop Linux world need to work on to improve. And the 3 things that I think of is collaboration, communication, and compromises. We need to have a very good communication with each other. We need to have a very good communication with each other so that we can collaborate on the work that we are doing, even if that means making some compromises on the way. More compromises less fragmentation. It means that we, instead of just borrowing ideas, we borrow actual technologies that our users benefit from. So I hope that one day maybe it will happen, and the whole desktop Linux world will become wealthier than what it is today. But before I wrap it up, I just want to thank developers like Kai and the whole KDE community for not only appreciating the work that he's doing, but also for creating such beautiful and great software that we all depend and rely on. So thanks for your work. See you soon. Bye bye.
So thank you. Yeah. See you. Bye.